This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
Precisely 1:15. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. News edited by Ramesh Piris and read by Sharifa Tahir. Headlines. 37 state ministers sworn in. The Prime Minister says cabinet approval granted for the payment of the retirement gratuity. The US assures support for restructuring Sri Lanka debt. The circular allowing government employees to take 5-year no-pay leave issued. The government to provide a special allowance to plantation workers from next month. The Education Ministry to introduce English medium in all schools from grade 1 next year. Sri Lankan writer Shehan Karunatilaka among 6 Booker Prize finalists. International news, Chinese and Russian leaders expected to meet for the first time since Ukraine war. Sports, Asia Cup eliminated India and Afghanistan, forced to turn attention towards T20 World Cup. Local news in detail now. The swearing-in of new state ministers was held at the Presidential Secretariat in Colombo under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe this morning. Accordingly, a total of 37 parliamentarians took oaths in their new state ministerial portfolios. The newly elected state ministerial portfolios as follows. Jagat Pushpakumara, State Minister of Foreign Employment Promotion. Ranjit Siambalapitiya, State Minister of Finance. Lasantha Alakiyavanna, State Minister of Transport. Janaka Vakkumbura, State Minister of Provincial Councils and Local Government. Mohan Priyadarshana De Silva, State Minister of Agriculture. Rohana Disanayaka, State Minister of Sports and Youth Affairs. Lohan Ratwata, State Minister of Plantation Industries. Indika Anuruddha, State Minister of Power and Energy. Sanath Nishantha, State Minister of Water Supply. Dilum Amanugama, State Minister of Investment Promotion. Vijitha Berugoda, State Minister of Pirivan Education. Siripala Gamlat, State Minister of Highways. Shantha Bandara, State Minister of Mass Media. Kanaka Herath, State Minister of Technology. Shehan Semasinghe, State Minister of Finance. Tenuka Vidanagamage, State Minister of Economic Development and Housing. Pramita Bandara Thendakon, State Minister of Defence. Arundika Fernando, State Minister of Urban Development and Housing. Taraka Balasuriya, State Minister of Foreign Affairs. Anuradha Jayaratne, State Minister of Justice and Prison Reforms. Sadasivam Vyalendran, State Minister of Trade. Sisira Jayakodi, State Minister of Indigenous Medicine. Piyal Nishantha De Silva, State Minister of Fisheries. Prasanna Ranavira, State Minister of Small and Medium Scale Enterprise Development. D.V. Shanaka, State Minister of Conservation of Wildlife and Forest Reserves. D.B. Herath, State Minister of Livestock Development. Shashindra Rajapaksha, State Minister of Irrigation. Dr. Sita Arambepola, State Minister of Health. Khader Mastan, State Minister of Rural Economy. Ashoka Priyantha, State Minister of Home Affairs. Aravind Kumar, State Minister of Education. Geeta Kumarasinghe, State Minister of Women and Child Affairs. Sivanesathurai Chandrakantan, State Minister of Rural Road Development. Suren Raghavan, State Minister of Higher Education. Diana Gamage, State Minister of Tourism. Chamaras Sampath Dasanayake, State Minister of Primary Industries. Anupa Paskal, State Minister of Social Empowerment. Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena said cabinet approval has been granted for the payment of the retirement gratuity of government employees, which was delayed until now. Accordingly, approval for the payment of retirement gratuity relating to the year 2021 was granted. The Treasury Department of Pensions has also stated that necessary funds for the payment will be made available by end of October this year. The approval has also been given to provide the amount of funds required for the payment of the pension gratuity due for the year 2022 to the Pension Department within 6 months. Also, the Cabinet has approved the appointment of a 6-member committee to study and submit a proposal on the sustainability of the retirement gratuity payment system. The United States Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen, has informed that the U.S., as a creditor nation, will participate in restructuring Sri Lanka's debt. A press release issued by the President's Media Division read that the critical need for the full cooperation of all official creditors in debt negotiations and restructuring through timely participation and equal burden sharing have been outlined. The U.S. Treasury, welcoming President Ranil Wickremesinghe's proposal for a coordination platform for Sri Lanka's official bilateral creditors, has urged engagement in this regard. The PMD said further, sharing the common goal with Sri Lanka of expediting financing assurances, the U.S. has expressed readiness to join other Paris Club members in this process in keeping with its principles. The Education Minister, Susil Premajanta, says along with the education reforms, the Education Ministry is planning to introduce the English medium in all schools from grade 1 next year. While addressing an event organized at the ministry under the theme English is Simple, the minister said the decision was taken to help children in rural areas to move with the new technology and with the world without fear. The minister also said that a proposal was made to continue mathematics and science subjects to be taught in English while in Sinhala medium classes from grade 6 onwards. This practice will also be applicable to students who study in the Tamil medium. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation giving you the news.
People's Bank, yes. Digital savings account, say yes to challenge.
Continuing with more stories here at home, Sri Lankan writer Shehan Karnatilaka is among the 6 authors who have made it to the Booker Prize shortlist, which were announced at a news conference in London on Tuesday. He becomes the second writer from the island nation to have emerged as a finalist in 2 years. This year's long list of 15 was whittled down from 169 novels. The winner will be announced on the 17th of October in an awards ceremony held at the Roundhouse in London. The winner will receive £50,000, while the shortlisted authors will receive £2,500 and a specially bound edition of their book. The chairman of the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation, Hudson Samarasinghe, says the state broadcaster is prepared to extend every possible support to improve the relationship between the public and the police. The chairman appreciated the commitment extended by the police during the insurgency period from 1972 to 1989. He made these comments participating in a live musical program to celebrate 156 years of the Sri Lanka Police on City FM and the commercial service of the SLBC. That's local news for the moment.
People's Bank, yes. Digital savings account, say yes to challenge.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
A circular has been published granting 5-year no-pay leave for public officers to be spent in or out of the country without affecting their seniority and pension. The communique was issued by the Secretary to the Ministry of Public Administration, Home Affairs and Provincial Councils. On June 13th, the Cabinet of Ministers granted approval to amend existing provisions to allow government employees to take no-pay leave for employment or other productive work abroad or to work in the private sector in the country. Later, on June 23rd, a 7-member committee was appointed to look into the matter. On Monday, the Cabinet of Ministers approved the proposal tabled by the Prime Minister to implement the recommendations of the committee.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
And on Watchlight, Power and Energy Minister Kanchana Vijaysekara says fuel station codes will be added to the SMS generated when obtaining fuels starting next week to prevent the illegal use of National Fuel Pass QR. The minister said the automated reports for fuel station dealers will be made and the dashboard for the public will be made available. The special category of quota increases will be tested on selected private and public sector entities this week. That's on Watchlight. Moving on to world news headlines. Chinese and Russian leaders expected to meet for the first time since Ukraine war. Israeli Prime Minister opposes prosecuting soldier who likely shot Abu Akleh. Earliest evidence of amputation found in Indonesia cave. World news in detail. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin are expected to meet next week in Uzbekistan as Beijing and Moscow ramp up economic cooperation in the face of Western-led censure and sanctions. The two leaders are due to meet on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit taking place on the 15th to the 16th of September. Russian ambassador to China, Andrei Denisov, told reporters on Wednesday, according to the Russian state news agency TASS. The meeting is the latest signal of warming ties between China and Russia, which have declared a no-limits friendship amid mounting economic challenges at home and increasingly strained relations with the United States and its allies overseas. Israel's Prime Minister Yair Lapid has pushed back against suggestions of prosecuting a soldier who likely shot dead Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh while she was covering an Israeli army operation in the occupied West Bank in May. Her killing caused global outrage and calls for an independent investigation. The Israeli army conceded on Monday for the first time that one of its soldiers had likely shot Abu Akleh after having mistaken her for a fighter. It had initially blamed Palestinian gunmen for her killing. Finally, on world news, the earliest evidence ever of surgical amputation has been discovered in an Indonesian cave. Researchers found the buried 31,000-year-old body of a young person that shows evidence of leg amputation. The find pushes back the origin of this complicated surgery by more than 24,000 years. The grave itself was excavated in a cave called Liang Tebo in East Kalimantan, Indonesian Borneo, a place that has some of the world's earliest rock art. That's world news. Moving on to development news. The government has decided to grant a special allowance to low-income families considering the prevailing economic conditions in the country. Minister of Labour and Foreign Employment Manusha Nanayakara said a special allowance will be granted to all workers in the plantation areas from next month through funding from the World Food Programme and the World Bank. Speaking during the Ministerial Consultative Committee on Labour and Foreign Employment meeting in Parliament, Minister Nanayakara said, on the directive of the President, they have taken decisions to provide the allowance to low-income urban dwellers as well. That's development news.
Sports news is brought to you by
Sampath Bank. We present your future.
And on sports news, Asia Cup, the 11th match in the series. It's a dead game as far as the tournament goes for India and Afghanistan, both hurting after a series of heartbreaking losses. The clash will be particularly tough for Afghanistan for obvious reasons. Physically, the heat and humidity would have taken its toll on the players because they will have to turn up fresh less than 18 hours after their pot boiler against Pakistan in Sharjah. That isn't all. There's also a matter of trying to lift themselves mentally and emotionally after Wednesday's heartbreak.
The fastest way to earn the highest interest from NSB, now extended till the 30th of September just for you. Your short-term deposits receive an attractive interest rate of 20% in 3 months and 22% in 7 months. Visit a bank branch or a main postal office today. NSB, the only bank with a 100% government guarantee.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
City Foundation has joined hands with the United Nations Development Programme in Sri Lanka to pledge its 70 million rupee contribution, with the primary focus on the diversification of agricultural livelihoods to ensure food security and increase farmer income for economic recovery. To address this need, UNDP, with grant support from the City Foundation, hopes to expand and diversify otherwise narrow livelihood opportunities through income generation, capacity building for upward mobility and economic recovery by addressing the current drop in production. The grant investment from City Foundation will benefit 5,200 vulnerable farmers identified as having limited resources to cultivate 2,600 acres of uncultivated land.
Business News. Sponsored by
The fastest way to earn the highest interest from NSB, now extended till the 30th of September just for you. Your short-term deposits receive an attractive interest rate of 20% in 3 months and 22% in 7 months. Visit a bank branch or a main postal office today. NSB, the only bank with 100% government guarantee.
And on economic news, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka says official reserve assets of Sri Lanka at the end of August 2022 were at $1,716. This is a decrease of 5.6% from the official reserve assets figure of $1,817 million in July 2022. Meanwhile, foreign exchange reserves, the main component of these official reserve assets, decreased from $1,709 million in July 2022 to $1,619 million in August. It is a decrease of 5.3%. That's on economic news. Moving on to the weather update. The Department of Meteorology says several spells of showers will occur in the western, Sabaragamu and northwestern provinces and in the Kandy, Nuwara, Galle and Mathura districts. Strong winds of about 50 km per hour can be expected at times over the western slopes of the central hills. In sea areas of the coast extending from Puttalam to Hambantota via Colombo and Galle will be fairly rough at times. The other sea areas around the island may be moderate. The naval and fishing communities are requested to be vigilant in this regard. That's the weather update. Before we wind up this bulletin of news, back to the headlines. 37 state ministers sworn in. The Prime Minister says cabinet approval granted for the payment of the retirement gratuity. The US assures support for restructuring Sri Lankan debt. The circular allowing government employees to take 5-year no-pay leave issued. The government to provide a special allowance to plantation workers from next month. The Education Ministry to introduce English medium in all schools from grade 1 next year. Sri Lankan writer Shehan Karunatilaka among 6 Booker Prize finalists. International news, Chinese and Russian leaders expected to meet for the first time since Ukraine war. Sports news, Asia Cup, eliminated India and Afghanistan, forced to turn attention towards T20 World Cup. With that, we conclude this bulletin of news.